everyone! Today we're gonna learn how to use the DPS calculator. This is a tool that, given a build and rotation input, dynamically calculates the total damage, DPS, buffs, and energy regen requirements. The purpose of this is to evaluate the maximum potential of various teams, and also calculate the difference between weapons, substats, and sequence value for better investment planning. Let's start out by talking about how it works. Disclaimer! The DPS calculator is a theorycrafting tool, and comparing theoretical outputs between teams should be taken with a grain of salt. Different team comps have different capabilities and strengths, especially when considering practical performance with difficulty, consistency, AoE scenarios, and required dodging. It's just theory, but it gives us a good idea of where things stand in the best situation. First, let's start with the data, the backbone of the calculator. In every character sheet, raw data can be found containing information on character passives, sequences, and their abilities. The passives are implemented with custom scripting that is interpreted by the backend. For more information on the syntax, check out the documentation tab. Now let's look at the kit. The damage values shown here are for level 1 skill values. Level 10 skill values can be derived by multiplying it by the skill level multiplier, as shown in this table in the constants tab. The most interesting part of the raw data is the time. This value is recorded manually by counting frames in footage. Let's talk about conventions. First off, whenever recording frames, it must be done in combat. Attacks in WoA have a slight hit lag, so you'll need to actually hit something to get the correct timing down. You'll notice several different types of data entries: neutral, cancel, swap, and sometimes fast or instant cancel. A neutral skill cast is the generic use case time it takes for this ability to lead into the next. Since animations typically have a very sharp transition between attack states, it's easy to find where one attack ends and another starts. A cancel is when a skill's animation is cancelled at the earliest possible time after all the damage occurs. The timing of this can be found by looking for the first frame where the final part of the attack registers, typically denoted by an obvious effect. Note that the damage pop-up associated with it may occur a few frames later, as it's affected by ping. A swap timing takes the minimum time, if any, a skill needs to be on field before it could be swapped out from. For example, if swapping out of Zani's targeted action, you need to be on field until the block animation finishes before you could swap. Any actions that are otherwise instantaneous, that is, that you could cancel or swap out of them on the literal first frame, are floored at a 0.25 second time. A fast cancel is a specific use case where a skill is used for a purpose other than its damage, and cancelled as soon as that purpose is fulfilled. For example, a fast cancel on Chun-Li's True Sight Conquest means you cancel it immediately after receiving your forte, but before all the damage resolves. Or, a fast cancel on Zani's targeted action means you cancel it immediately after receiving the buff, before any damage even occurs. Finally, an instant cancel is exactly what it sounds like. If any of the timings look off, feel free to send in a report to get it fixed. Frame timings have been updated several times, and changes can be found in the ever-growing changelog, which documents the hundreds of changes so far. As a broader check, you can also compare the time of entire rotation segments to sheet time, and easily see if something is off or not. For example, let's say you want to check the triple Nightfall rotation, which clocks in at 11.7 seconds. Simply test this in-game. such a small difference in practice, you can confirm this data is correct. And next, let's talk about how to set up rotations. First, we'll need to confirm the build. Select your characters, their resonance chains, weapons, echoes, and echo builds. Then, for the echo substats, the convention used for all non-supports post 2.0 is as follows. 5 rolls of crit and crit damage, and then 6 substats distributed evenly between other desired stats, typically flat attack, damage bonus, and attack percent. In some cases, where a non-trivial amount of energy regen is mandatory to make the rotation work out, such as Encore with our double liberation rotation, these ER lines are added to the base build and taken out of the substat budget. Now let's build a rotation. Here, you'll pick characters and their skills to use in order. You'll need to manually pick the neutral, cancel, or swap entries depending on the skill's context in the rotation. When copy-pasting parts of the rotation, make sure to use Ctrl-Shift-V, or else you'll break the cell references. When you're satisfied with the rotation, or want to test the energy, you will need to run the script, a guide for which is included with the link in the spreadsheet or in the description of the video. When the script runs, you'll be able to see all of these other columns update. Energy calculations, local and global buffs, and a buff table including a non-exhaustive list of common buffing effects, including base stats, damage bonus, amplification, and more. In the damage column, any cells tagged with a note means that source ability procced additional damage, and you could open up this tooltip to see specific information. The time column may also update, as the script will process any swapback timers or add a small waiting time if you attempt to use a skill right before its off cooldown. If something is very off, it'll be highlighted in red. The most common red message you'll see is for energy regen requirements, as it's standard practice to leave ER base stats at 0 unless explicitly needed. This will then let you know exactly how much energy regen you are short. Speaking of time, the time scams are implemented in the calculator. When using certain liberations, such as that of Shen Liao, and swapping out of them before taking any other action, a negative time is compounded to make up for the frozen time value where you can act on other characters freely. Starting from scratch can be a little intimidating. If you want to start out with a pre-existing rotation, check out the build library or character sheets. These all have rotation data which you can copy and then paste into this import cell on the main calculator page. Check the confirmation box and then run the import build script to instantly bring up an entire loadout. Every execution you make will automatically save a receipt in the build library. In fact, you can check every rotation I've tested from the beginning of time here, or in the archive tab. Let's talk about how to optimize a rotation. The main goal of optimizing a rotation is fitting it around constraints as best as you can. For most teams, this constraint is typically a liberation cooldown. For example, 25 seconds on Shorekeeper and Zani. Though some teams, such as Carlotta's, have an additional constraint with their 14-second skill cooldown. A great example of optimization is the first iteration of the Zani Phoebe Shorekeeper rotation. While this was initially fitted to the 25-second cooldown, there was a bug with the swap back timer that made swapping back to Zani during Nightfall only consider the natural swap back timer, without considering that the animation still had plenty of time left. Because of how much extra time this bug created, there was extra filler added in parts of the rotation just to buy time for cooldowns. When fixing this bug, the total rotation time went up by several seconds, eliminating the need for said filler, and opening the door for plenty of optimization. We can reuse a lot of the same optimization tactics that are already used in several other rotations, as well as this rotation itself. For example, adding a quick swap after Shorekeeper's second basic 1-2-3, the same way we swap out of her first, getting Phoebe's combo and harem swap done at that point instead. Other optimizations include a Zani quick swap during Phoebe's Starflash, the same way we would swap the Spectra Rover during Starflash in Phoebe main DPS comps. With these changes, we get the loop time of the rotation back to the 25-second constraint. Theorycrafting is a live and complicated process, and new tech and optimizations are being found out every day. Now that you understand how it works, you can join in on the number crunching fun and help us keep improving the accuracy and depth of this tool for all the benefits. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!